Hello, everyone. Okay, sorry. Multitasking, getting folks in the room. Thank you for coming today. I am so excited for class today. We have Stephanie Moon joining us. She is a marketing expert, which I feel like this is one of the things we talk about the most. I get the most questions about. So I'm really, really excited to have her help today. And her thing is cookbooks, which is even better. Because I talk to a lot of folks who specialize in like nonfiction or literature and stuff like that. And while there's still a lot of value to that, there's something about someone knowing the realm of cookbooks because it is such a specific world and there are things that make it really unique. So I'm really, really excited to have her here today. I actually booked a like essentially pick your brain call with her a few months ago when I was getting started on the marketing planning for my current cookbook, which was so helpful. And I'll add, even when though I am traditional publishing, I am responsible for, as I'm being reminded this week very painfully, most of my marketing. um, and yeah, and so and Stephanie, maybe you can touch on this a bit too, but one thing I always remind folks is the difference between marketing and PR. So, I think you can talk about what you do and what your expertise is in. We have a publicist coming to talk to us, I want to say next month
Mhm.
as well. So where we'll kind of deep dive that whole process. And it's fun. And, today I feel like there's more and more overlap between PR and marketing. Um, but marketing is, when we talk about marketing versus PR, marketing is going to be more what you are doing yourself with your own platforms to garner attention and traffic. And PR has a lot more to do with leveraging other people's platforms through pitching media, through podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, Stephanie, I will turn it over to you. Please give us a longer, better introduction of yourself and what you specialize in and all that jazz.
Thanks so much. Excited to be here. I will just turn on share my presentation. But while I'm doing the tech, I am a book marketing consultant and like strategist. My background is really in I worked at a few big publishers and always on the marketing and publicity side. And so just to like touch on that, marketing is really like your brand, your community, any ads you do, but then publicity is like outreach, so pitching for stuff. And I agree, in the past couple years, there's been so much overlap that it can be kind of confusing, um, which is okay. And I think like as authors, knowing how to do both is really crucial for kind of finding success, right? Because there is so much overlap. So kind of this is a quick presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions during about ways you can start marketing your book, even if it's not done. And you guys can read, so I won't really be reading the slides. But let me just know if there are questions. So this is really for you. My ethos is really like I like to teach authors how to market because if you want to have more than one book, you're going to have to be doing it all the time, right? Marketing doesn't end. Marketing is like a constant that you're doing from way before your book comes out, theoretically, till like way after a book comes out, right? And so, yeah, that's why I teach authors how to do this instead of telling you to like hire an agency or hire me or whatever, right? It's like, I want you to be able to do this yourself. And then what we'll learn is a little bit about the journey, and then how you can get started. Um, and oh, the top and just also I have found that this piece of context is really helpful. Why I think authors are not marketing maybe as much as they could or should is that one, I think there's, especially in the past 3 to 5 years, there's been so much more information like available, right? With YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, all of these things, right? And sometimes you don't know who to listen to, right? And I think that there's also um, you need to find like the context of what that person is telling you because the way you would market like a fiction book is different than a cookbook. And so know that. Also, I know marketing can be so overwhelming, so just take it like a little step at a time. And also, I think that authors, to find success, you should be really starting to market like now, like yesterday, right? And and then I get you'll see why that's important. Um, so Chelsea did a little intro of me. Hi. These are some of the publishers I've worked at and places where I've like secured media. And also, yeah, they can like really overlap. So the first big thing is that I want to like acknowledge and share is that writing your book and talking about your book are like two completely different things, right? And they both take time and different skills to do, right? Like I can market your book or tell you how to market your book and build your brand and build your community like all day, but I don't think I could write a book, right? And so just know that it's like a different skill set, right? And so the quicker you can kind of accept that and then get good at it, like the better chance you'll have of like just getting more comfortable with marketing. And then this is like a really broad, quick overview of like a book and marketing a, a funnel for book marketing and book sales. And so in like marketing speak, right, everything is like a funnel. At the top is where most people is like visibility. So that's when you're on a podcast and somebody hears you. That's when you're on a local broadcast station and someone sees you. That's kind of where most people can find you. Then after that, so if somebody really liked that recipe you made, they're gonna theoretically follow you on social media. Then after that, you know, they've been following you. They see like, "Ugh, I really love these vegan Chinese recipes that you've been doing. Let me subscribe to their email list because I want to know more. I want to know what they're doing right when they do it. I need to be in their community, right? And then from there, even further down is then the person who buys your book. And basically, as you can see, because it's a funnel, at every point in the journey, people drop off, right? And so that's why you need to like keep doing this all the time, basically. Um, and I know that in publishing, a lot of times people talk about your platform. And the way I like to like really describe platform is how new people find you and then how your existing community follows you. Um, and I think that your platform can be in a lot of different places. It doesn't have to be just social media, but it does have to be somewhere. And you can have a platform without being online, but that means you have to be out in your community, like physically out meeting people, talking to people, being at events, right? That can work if you are willing to spend your time doing that instead of spending your time kind of like online in the digital space. Um,
Stephanie, on the topic of platforms, do you think that have you seen one type of platform be more impactful than others, or would you say it's more a matter of wherever you're producing content, wherever you're comfortable?
um, so I definitely think right now the hottest platform for cookbook authors is Substack. I think that I have seen people Substack really drive sales to their own books plus other people's books. So like in the mentions or recommends sections, right? If a big food content creator like mentions your book there, you can visibly see like more pre-orders, more sales, right? If it's the right audience that you know they're speaking to that also wants your cookbook. But what I've also seen is that authors um like think it's so fun, but can't um like just get tired of it really easily because Substack is like long form content, right? You have to be like constantly writing stuff, producing stuff. So I think that's just one thing to be aware of. I think I've seen a lot of people start a Substack and go for it for like a month and they're like, wait a minute, this is so much work. Why am I doing it? And so I think part of it is also like knowing that whichever platform you pick, you need to be consistent. You need to be like constantly there, right? Constantly engaging, creating content, being part of that community.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then since most of you are self-publishing, I think just wanted to put out there that, traditional and self-publishing are the same in many ways and different in many ways. But for if you're self-publishing, like you're your best salesperson and you are in charge of like everything about your book, right? Like you get to decide the cover, you get to decide the timing, you get to decide like which recipes to include, right? But that also means you're in charge of all the sales. You're in charge of figuring out like if you want accounts to buy your book, or like directing people to your Amazon page or directing people to the pages, right? No one else is doing that. So, excuse me, it's really important to kind of like know that unless you've hired somebody, like you're it, right? So it's a lot about like creating some consistency. So the first thing you can do is know how to articulate the value of your book. And that's really getting really clear. And so that that's kind of like an elevator pitch, right? It's knowing like who did you write the book for and why did you write it? And I think also I've seen a lot of authors fall into this trap of my book is for everybody who wants to eat healthy. And I think that that's way too general because if you write a book or if you talk about your book like it's for everybody, you're like talking to no one, right? You want to be so specific that, Sally knows that this is for her because she wants to eat more vegetables. She lives in a place that doesn't have a farmer's market and she has like limited time. All of those things are kind of characteristics that you want to kind of like talk about a lot, right? Because you want people to feel like when they read your content, hear you talk about your book, that like your book is for them. And you have touched on those very specific characteristics that make this book really speak to them, right? And make them really want to go out and get it. Um, and so, like, why does this matter? Because the way you talk about your book is the way other people are going to talk about your book. So, the example I like to give is like if you're at a party and somebody says like, "Oh, what are you working on?" and you say like, "Oh, I'm writing a cookbook and it's just for people who want to eat more vegetables, but." I ran into this problem, and you take 5 minutes to describe your book, um, they won't remember that, right? Versus if you have like a very succinct um way, like one-liner basically, or elevator pitch, they'll remember that. And like the best elevator pitches are ones where the person who hears it knows somebody that they could recommend this book for because they know who it's for and they know why that person wants it, right? You want them to be basically saying like, "Oh, my neighbor John, this would be perfect for him." And the way to kind of like test this is to like test it in person or test it online. Basically say the pitch to somebody and see what their reaction is. If they like kind of just glaze over and have no questions, no reaction, it probably didn't hit, right? And the idea is that your elevator pitch should be so natural for you to say it's like reciting your phone number. It's like reciting your email address, right? You say it and people get it. And that just takes time, right? And it takes a lot of kind of honing in on what parts of your book people are really excited about. And I think this is also one place that you can use comps. Um, you can use comps if you like kind of like do it right, and that can be really helpful for people. Any questions on that? No.
No, I was just gonna say I have experienced this like firsthand so many times. As my first two cookbooks are about sous vide cooking, and I'll say, "Oh yeah, it's about sous vide," blah, blah, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I don't sous vide, but my sister-in-law does, and she's gonna love this." And like that's like such a common reaction that I so this very much resonated with me, and I can see how this works. And I was just thinking too. I think even if you're thinking like, well, how many times am I going to talk about my book in person or whatever? This translates to the internet. Like I've been reading a ton lately about like content creation and all that stuff as I'm working on promotion of this book. And something I saw recently that was really helpful was um somebody said you need to start every video as though you're talking to someone who's brand new to your audience. And so if you can make sure to do like a mini version of that elevator pitch in every single piece of content that you create, you're going to be able to draw those new people in. And, the 5-10 seconds it takes for you to blurt out that mini version isn't going to lose your current followers or anything like that. So anyways, just this really resonated.
And I have like an example of that. This is not a cookbook, but an author basically said her elevator pitch in every single video, and she had 10,000 pre-orders for like a fiction book, which is like a ton, but also because she worked so hard on marketing her book. She's working on her second book, and she did the same thing. At the beginning of every video, she says this little cute one quippy like one-liner, and that's what you know her for. And her one-liner for her first book was like, I think it's like a witchy Gilmore Girls book or something like that. And I love Gilmore Girls. I don't love witches, but I was like, oh, okay. I remember her, right? And so that's what you want. Okay, so the second thing is build confidence. So build credibility and awareness in the industry. So this is also kind of like relationship building. And so people talk about platform a lot, and I think for self-publishing, platform is really important because, like I said earlier, you're your best salesperson, right? And so you need to be able to tell people that you created this book, and you do that by building relationships, right? You do that by building credibility. And so it's, you know, in that funnel, it's in that funnel, you're doing all of those things. And what can feel, I think, Chelsea, you kind of like touched on it. It's like you have to, you don't know where somebody is coming into your content, kind of. So you have to be creating content for all different kinds of people in on all parts of the journey, right? And so some people might be very familiar with you. They might have been following you for 5 years, but what you are actually hoping for is people who are new to you, right? And people who are new to you, you have to like build a relationship with them so they can like know, like, and trust you. So they'll want to buy your book, right? And so a lot of that is maybe sharing a lot about yourself, being vulnerable, recipes, like successes, failures. It's like all of that because really what will set you apart from another food content creator is like your take on it, right? And how you do this different because um that's just what makes you, right? There's like so many books. Like I think it was like 4 million. Actually, I don't remember. Millions of cookbooks are sold every year, right? But what sets, the ones apart, the ones that sell like, in traditional publishing, like 30,000, 50,000, is that book is written by somebody who has a very distinct kind of persona. And you kind of like know a lot about them, if that makes sense. And so kind of how you can do that is how can you be engaged with your community? And I think this is like a super important part because your community, you want to have like relationships with the people in your community. And being online makes that really easy versus like, having to meet like 1,000 people in person, right? And so how can you engage with them? How can you really get to know them? And then also, how can you be available to them? Kind of, how can you show them more of yourself? Because you're more than just a food content creator, right? You're more than just a cook. You're all of these other things, right? You're maybe a mom, a daughter, a wife, etc. Like, and you have also other interests, right? You don't just like think about cooking. You think about other stuff. You think about sports, your kids, books, whatever it is, right? Because those other parts of your life are also what helps you resonate with your audience and what really you know endears you to them. Because I think I've heard a lot from authors where they say, like, I worked like 5 hours on this one reel for this recipe that I thought was going to be amazing and go viral and da da da. And then they're like, it got like 50 views. And then I made this reel about my dog and my dog reel went viral, right? And I think it's because people are nosy and want to get to know you. People want to know what's happening in your life, and how they can feel related to you, how they can like relate also on different levels with you. Any thoughts or questions here? No?
Yeah, I don't think so. I'll for sure agree with this. Any piece of content I have that does well is never the piece of content that I tried the hardest on. It's never what I hoped or thought, and it's very frustrating, but it is what it is.
And like it happens to everyone. That's what I hear constantly. I see it in my own content, like this random thing I posted that has nothing to do with marketing or books. People are like, they have so much to say. Um, but that's good, right? So, and then three is commitment. So own your own channels. And so to kind of give background, there's like four different types of media: owned, shared, paid, earned, right? And owned owned media are your website, your email list, your blog, if you have a podcast. Um, and you need to just own them, right? You need to be creating content here. You need to be nurturing people here, right? Versus let me go back. I can quickly go over the other ones. So, paid content is definitely like ads. Earned content is like PR, right? So if you were to pitch yourself for somebody else's podcast, you were to pitch yourself for article, etc., right? That's like earned. You earned that because somebody else wrote about you. And then shared is social because you're sharing that because and also as social is changing, I would say you definitely need to have some robust owned content because your account could get shut down. The social channel that you prefer could be no longer available. Like there's so much with social that feels like if you spent so much time and energy and years basically building this up, and one day you just can't log into your account, like all of that effort is now gone. And I would hate to see that happen. But that has definitely also happened. So just look at your owned media and just start kind of like pouring in there. And so like the easiest way is start creating content, right? Find your marketing voice because your marketing voice is just really different than writing your book. And it can take some time to like get um and the only way you can like get better is if you do it more. Um and so your platform really is, aside from writing your book, is definitely one of the most time-consuming tasks, right? It's something you can't speed up. Like you could speed make a website if you wanted in a weekend if you had to, but building those relationships and then being known as the person who has sous vide recipes, that can't happen overnight, right? You have to be constantly saying it. You have to be constantly creating content. You have to be constantly reminding people. And this is like one of my favorite like visual images basically for marketing and book marketing is that, you should You should start when you're not ready because it takes time, right? Everything builds on itself. And marketing is about so many little things that you're doing all the time that it takes time just to like get used to them. Like I'm sure the first time you made a blog post, it took you so long, and now maybe you're, 10 times better at it, right? But you only can get better and more efficient if you do it, if you like spend the time like actually doing the action, right? And I also think that the second image of the hard work and a straight line to success, like we know that it's not like that, right? So just know it kind of like goes in waves. Um, but doing it doing it more will help you, right? It's like that idea of like 10,000 hours, right? To become an expert at something, you have to just do it a lot. And so that's a lot the same with marketing. Um,
Just have to say I am obsessed with that first graphic.
yeah.
And I will add uh that I feel like applies to starting your book, period. I'm gonna say hint, hint, nudge, nudge to a few people who are even in this room right now, because it can feel like very intimidating, overwhelming to start your cookbook. But again, if you wait until you're ready or you have time or like whatever, it's a can that's kicked down the road forever. But if you like start chipping away at it and doing little things here and there, by the time you are in a place where you have like more time to go full throttle or whatever it might be, you're going to already have made all this progress. And yeah, I totally see that with marketing as well. Because it can be unfortunate to be like, okay, I'm in full book writing mode. I can't market right now, like blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden your book is ready and you're going to put it out into the world and you've laid no groundwork. So anyways, love this.
And I agree. It's like what can help is like breaking it down. Like you don't need to post a 10-minute reel that you made of like really cool transitions of this really hard recipe. But you could just make a post today. Like, what did you eat for lunch? How is it relevant to whatever you are writing or want to be writing, right? And I also think if you're just getting started on the marketing, it's like well, if your audience is small, who's seeing it, right? Get good at creating the good content because the only way you're going to get better is if you make those mistakes, right? And you want to make the mistakes or have some of that learning be now where maybe not as many people are seeing it, right? And
Oh, oh, there, you were frozen for a second.
oh, Um, oh, I'm unstable. Well, I'll keep talking. Choose your own channel and then go all in on it. So I think that, I know we talked about Substack. That's kind of owned, right? Because you're going right into somebody's email box, but you are on Substack's, platform. I mean, I think it's fine. I think a lot of people have built really great communities on Substack. But I think it's just really committing to the idea of showing up and showing up in a place that you own is behooves you more than more than just social, if at all possible. But start somewhere. So if social is where you need to start, start there. And then that's kind of all I had for the three things. I have also just quickly, I have like a few, these are all like digital asset. So the author's atlas is like what you would do like 1 year ahead of your book launch. So it's kind of like a roadmap. The author's agenda sorry, I got that so confused. The author's atlas is content, like how you lead your customers through the customer journey. So it has like prompts and a really big graph to show you ideas, etc. The author's agenda is what you do from when your book comes out, a year before your book comes out, all the way up till the book launch. And then I have content prompts for cookbook authors, but also I do like one-off calls, private coaching and consulting. Yeah, I love working with cookbook authors. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. There we go.
Yeah.
Now we're good.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you so much. That was super, super helpful. There was a lot in there, like I mentioned, that really resonated with me and has been definitely a part of my own experience and a lot too now that I have my wheels turning. I especially love that you talked about, like I keep thinking now, like the one-liner that one of your clients started every piece of content with. And I'm like, okay, I need a one-liner for my cookbook. But let's see. We had one question. We have somebody hopping in from Cheryl. So she said, I want to start small.
Mhm.
How do we start marketing with our email list before we even start marketing to broader audiences? So before you start talking to a cold audience. And then she mentioned that the author of Mindful Mocktails was able to do 8,000 pre-sales, which is amazing, largely through her email list. So yeah, maybe how would you recommend starting small?
So I think marketing through your email list is really great because you're going right into somebody's inbox. And I think it's just about like it's the same, bringing them on that journey, right? Like telling them what your book is about, storytelling, giving them value, right? Because I think that also content should be 80-20. So 80% you are giving something, right? And 20% ask. Because I think you can't just always be asking them to pre-order your book, leave a review, all of that stuff, right? You need to also be giving them something. So I think it's trying to figure out, or it's figuring out what they want and then creating that for them, right? Because that value is what makes them keep opening your email and makes them keep coming back for more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think you know, that same principle can be applied on whatever platform you're
Yes.
looking at getting, especially with food stuff. Unfortunately, we all know how people love to complain about doing the slightest bit of work in order to get access to a recipe or anything like that. So I think the giving is unfortunately is especially important for us.
Yes. And I will say, by starting small, I also think do not be afraid to reuse your content because I think there's also this idea of like, oh, I already did that. But also, like we talked about the one-liner, it's like, yeah, but people need to be like hear the same message repeatedly. So you can share the same content again with a slightly different, like in a slightly different way. Or you can like what I'm thinking of. Okay, so for example, you have a recipe on your blog, right? You can share it many, many times on social, just in slightly different ways, or even the same way. Like, oh, do you need a quick dinner? Oh, do you have this item in your refrigerator and you don't know how to eat it? Oh, I made this for my mom and she loved it. Oh, my kid lo doesn't like anything, love this. Whatever it is, you can like reframe it in a ton of different ways and still direct to the same piece of content you made. So don't be afraid to reshare it because I think that yeah, I've seen a lot of authors really afraid to do that, but I'm like, I know that that recipe that you developed, wrote, photographed, etc., took a long time. So just like reuse it. Oh, I see
Mhm.
this question. Uh, uh, Oh, hi, Allison. I see your question in the chat, and I think when your book first comes out, I think you should be marketing it a lot because that's kind of like like the quote unquote most exciting time. But I also think, right, like also what I've seen authors do is they forget that, your on sale date is like actually your book's birthday. That's the first time somebody who sees you and is in your community can actually see you talk about it and then buy the book and then get it right away. Because I still think that that idea of pre-ordering, giving somebody your money and then not getting the item is still pretty like a hard ask for a consumer. And I think it doesn't have to be annoying. I think there are lots of different ways to talk about your book without it feeling like you're shoving like your book in their face, but also like they're part of your email list. They want to know what's happening, right? They want to see. So it's like if you've had a lot of cool, fun stuff happen since the launch, tell them about it because also that's the only way they're going to find out, right? You need to be your own best cheerleader. And it doesn't always have to be like you holding the book up, right? And it doesn't always have to be showing the cover. It can be like, I was on this podcast, and then share the podcast link, right? You can have like a static banner that shows, um, that shows information about your book. You can have a link. You can have like a picture of your book cover just always at the bottom. There's lots of different ways. So I think like keep remarketing, but I also think if your book is just out, I think it's absolutely okay to share about it often.
And there are different ways you can share about it. Like it doesn't have to, every email doesn't have to be, my book is on sale, my book is on sale, my book is on sale. It can be, hey, I'm going to do a book signing at this shop if you're
Oh,
local.
yes.
And it can be like, oh, look what people are loving. Look at these reviews. Like I got this feedback. Yay. Or it can be, here are my 5 favorite recipes from the new cookbook. Like there's a lot of different angles that you can take
Yes,
that don't make it feel as like repetitive.
exactly. Exactly.
I have a question for you. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people like myself can get really hung up in like the planning aspect of any project, and book marketing is definitely one of those. And while I do think that there's value in planning because that's my nature, I think it can also just like hinder you from actually getting started. When you are working on a book marketing plan, what do you think is absolutely essential? And then where do you draw the line where you just like need to get started?
Oh, interesting question. I think essential, hmm. I think it depends which part of the plan. So I think it's kind of like if you've made it this far to have a cookbook, I think you are probably relatively good at creating content because you've created content for your cookbook and theoretically you've created content for your website, your blog, your social. So I feel like that's you're already doing that. I think it's kind of where I see some hangups are when people are approaching for partnerships or events, and also media. So I think for those three things specifically, it's what you have to take into account is that you're working with somebody else. And so you need to be ahead of it because people are slow and busy. And also, your book is not their priority, right? Your book is your priority. So you're ready to like pounce on anything that comes in, but they have like tons of other stuff to do. So I would say, starting to implement as soon as possible is um, more helpful than waiting, I guess. So I'm not sure if that answers exactly what your question.
Yeah. No, I think it totally does. And I experienced, unfortunately, firsthand, like I was planning and getting ready back in November, December, my book launches in April. And I kept getting told by my publisher, it's too early, it's too early. Like, don't worry about that for now. And then in February, I'm all of a sudden in it's too late mode. And so that can happen really fast. So I think as much work as you can do in advance, you're going to be so grateful that you did it later.
Yeah, and I think like for that, I mean, if you want to know your publishers, like it's too early because I think publishers are like, oh, the time right before Christmas, everybody is burnt out on Christmas, right? And then in the publishing world, it's like you're kind of like in a weird spot between fall and then spring. But then also in January, it's like bam, spring and fall are like here basically, and so it gets really crazy and then they're really busy. So that's like the publisher's context, if you were
Yeah.
wondering. Yeah,
It's just whirlwind.
yeah.
Um, let's see. It looks like Cheryl just asked a question.
Oh, I can answer that question, Cheryl, from like a traditional aspect. Um, tr in traditional publishing, I would say 10 recipes or like 10 or 15% can kind of be like pre-published is kind of like the standard, I guess. But I think in self-publishing, you get to choose what you want, right? And so you also know your audience best. I know that there have been many food content creators who self-publish their books, and they're actually like the flip of traditional publishing. They mostly put content that already exists, like on their blog, on whatever. They fill their book with mostly like older content because they know it's resonates and people like it. And then they only put like 10 to 15% of new content. So it's really up to you, since you know your audience best.
And I always tell people too, I think a lot of the value of a cookbook comes from the fact that it is a collection, whereas your blog is this big, vast pit, and they're not going to
Mhm.
even know what to look for. And so there's a good chance they will have never come across it had you not put it all together in a cookbook.
Yeah. And I also think too, people like a cookbook because it's also physical. Like, I mean, sometimes I hate looking at my phone. Like, where did, like, oh, the window closed. Oh, my phone turned black. Like, oh, it like jumped to the beginning of the recipe and I'm like 3/4 of the way. Just having a book is a different feeling than cooking from a recipe that's digital only. So I think just kind of um, be like, those are two different things. And then I see this question from Tina. You don't know exactly when your book is coming out, and I think that's okay. So I think the like marketing you would do right now is really honing in on who your audience is. And if you already know that, then it's like honing in on like what your cookbook is about. And kind of like starting to share that message, right? What's that value? Like, why does somebody need your book versus also just going to your blog? And I think you can always be growing your audience, right? So you'll have more people to market to. And then also, I think it would also be great, like, oh, could you start testing out some partnerships or collaborations, right? Because if it goes well, then you'll have that, or theoretically you'll have that partner again for your book launch, right? And sometimes some of those things take a really long time to happen.
Um, okay, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Have you seen any out of the box marketing tactics that lately that you found like impressive or you thought like worked especially well?
Hmm. I, hmm. Good question. I have been really not obsessed, but like really following Caroline Chambers since she did that since she shared about her Substack. Have you seen that? Um
It rings a bell. When you said Caroline Chambers, I'm like, this is
she
like
has
someone.
this I guess it's a blog, Substack, and on Instagram, what to cook when you don't feel like cooking.
Mhm.
And she did a like an interview with Diane Jacobs about how her Substack makes $1 million plus a year, and like how she built that and all of that. And so I am watching her because I think like what she has done really successfully is really build a community, right? She has had events like all over the country and they like sell out. People are waiting in lines, right? And I just think that that community aspect is so important. And I think, you know, I don't know if this is marketing, but I live in San Francisco, and so when the fires in LA happened, I saw two food bloggers who also have massive followings, right? So I think just take that also, know that as I'm telling this story. What's Gabi Cooking and then Weelicious. They like live in the LA area, but their houses were not affected. But they like immediately, right, was reaching out to their community to see how they could help. They were immediately helping people. And I was like, this is probably like one of the best examples of like content creators that actually really care and are doing something to help other people, right? Like, of course, they want to sell their book and their products and whatever, but then, like, in this instance, they were like, oh my God, I need to help people, right? Like, Welicious had like organized, I think it was like 70 brands to donate food and foodstuffs and pantry stuff, whatever, for people who lost their house. And then What's Gotta Be Cooking has been collecting money to like make food for first responders. And it's been crazy. She shows it. And like I've donated to it because I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just gonna help. I know this is going to exactly where she says it does, right? And I think it's just such an example of how these two content creators have really built a community, and then how they also are giving back to the community, right? And then so I think that's a lesson.
Allison, I don't know what you're referring to. Uh,
Oh, so when I say partnerships, I'm thinking more like brand partnerships or partnerships with other content creators. So like as like a food content creator, there's actually so many brands and retailers, etc., that you can like partner with. And excuse me, what I mean by that is like, could you do some co-branded content? Could you do a sponsored post that like promotes their product plus your product? Could you do, there's tons of different things you can do, and I think the food space probably has like the most one of the most like available brands out there, right? Because I think from an author's perspective, I want you to, when you're approaching like a collaboration or partnership, think like this brand, like even though they have product, they are also content creators, right? Like they also probably have a blog, they also have social, they also have an email. And so they're looking for content because, like, creating content is so much work, right? So basically, you're giving them free content to be exposed to their audience. And also why I think partnerships and collaborations are helpful is basically you're borrowing their audience. And for a consumer, that looks like a personal referral. And 50% of all purchases are affected by a personal referral.
that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get creative. Like obviously with sous vide, I got really lucky because it goes with a device that companies sell, and so I really leveraged that. Even to the point of like, there's a local chain of bookstore or of kitchen supply stores, and I would demo using their sous vide machines and be able to sell my book at the same table, and that stuff like that like worked really well for me. Or if there's like a common product, or I actually did that with meat with some of my cookbooks. And so there's lots of ways you can go about it, and those things can also help potentially make your recipe testing more cost effective. So I'll throw that in there as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's about being creative, right? Because I think that brands are open, right? And they also want creative ideas. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as you're creating recipes, because I think there's so many different places and different avenues you can go to kind of get get the word out about you and then your book.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I think that is all of our questions. Before we let Stephanie go, does anybody else have a question today? And then if not, thank you, Stephanie, so much for coming. We're going to send, there will obviously be a replay of this as usual, and we're going to send all the resources that says Stephanie mentioned out with the replay as well. So you'll get all of the links to everything.
Oh, I have a
Um,
question. This is
yeah, go
Cheryl.
ahead.
I can type fast enough. You said you had worked with Stephanie earlier. Stephanie, can we hire you like if we wanted a marketing consultant? Like,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. I will just email me or message me on Instagram, either one. But absolutely. That would be so fun.
Okay. And
Yeah,
Chelsea, so do we have her contact information?
I'll
Like,
send
is
it
it
to you. And I was just about to ask, Stephanie, will you share your Instagram handle?
Yes, absolutely.
It's Steph Moonco, I believe, right?
Yep.
Off top. Yep, just one word, Steph Moonco. Here, I got
Yep.
it. Great.
Yeah, typed it in there. Yeah, I'll include all the links, etc. Yeah, and I love cookbooks. It's just yeah, a special place in my heart.
Yes, and it's such like a unique thing. Yeah, so when I booked a call with her, I had like just a ton of questions, and so I just did like a pick your brain call essentially.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those can be incredibly helpful. I find
Mm-hmm.
doing creative work in a vacuum to be very difficult. I like just need to have somebody else listen to me and like give me their thoughts and ideas
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while.
Yeah.
So definitely do something like that.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Would love it.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have
All
a
right,
good
I think
one.
that's everything. Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. We appreciate you, and I'll send people your way if they have any questions.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.